Hey, it's Mike with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's January 8th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And if you look at the big picture here, including the overnight, this was a huge day. It's almost a 100-point move from the overnight lows to the highs this afternoon. However, if you just look at what happened during the trading hours, it doesn't look nearly as dramatic, and it's much more confusing, really, to be honest with you. We never did quite fill the gap from the overnight or from the close yesterday. This red line going across here, let me back out a little more. I'm just going to back out to the more pertinent part of the price action today, which would be from 7 o'clock, which came right in here, to 2 o'clock, which is the white line there. The white starts at 8:30 and then ends at 2. But we really start, you can start trading around 7 o'clock, which is right in this area right here. So if you look at really from where we opened at 8:30 to where we were at 2 o'clock today, it's not nearly as dramatic as of a move, and it's pretty volatile, a lot of ups and downs, and easy to kind of get shaken out of trades and stopped out on trades, even though you might have, prices might have been heading, you might have got the direction right, you could still get stopped out real quick, real easy. And that's one of the problems when it gets volatile like this, is that trading with 8 tick stops is hard to do. Um, so you either have to try some, there's a couple different ways to do it. We talk about this in case you're new. One is you can, if you if you have to increase, let's just give you an example. If you were going to enter right here and it took you more than 8 ticks to put your stop below the swing, which is goes below this signal bar right here. Let's say it takes you 10 ticks instead of the usual 8 that is our rule. So you have to add 2 ticks to it. Just add 2 ticks to your profit. That's about the only way you can do it. Other than one other option is once it breaks higher and is going up, drop you a limit order that's somewhere in that bar within the 8 tick rule and see if it'll come back and stop you in. As you can see though, in this instance right here, this thing took off and wouldn't have come back. And that's what the best trades do. So you'll miss all the best trades doing it that way. So the only other option is to just go ahead and enter the trade, figure out what your extra ticks are needed, and add that to your scalp. And you can see here also you would have easily got that extra plus some, and you'd had a runner and so forth uh, as well, an easy runner. And that doesn't look like a big move, but that move is actually, I'm just curious now. From the top of that bar was 32.44 and a quarter, and this thing went all the way to 52 and a quarter. That's 10 points right there. So if you could get 5 or 6 of that, you did pretty good, and that's a pretty nice runner. But you might get 7 or 8 or whatever out of that. So that's a couple of ways you can handle it. Otherwise, you have to be really careful when it's volatile like this, because there's, I got at least one or two emails today about people asking, I got stopped out by 1 tick. I put my stop where it goes. What did I do wrong? You didn't really do anything wrong. It's just volatile, and people are nervous, and the market can swing in both ways more than a little more than it normally does. And so you can get stopped out having your stop in the right place. Um, and I'll talk about a trade here in a minute that somebody asked me about, and this is a good example right here. You got a little 2-bar matching high. Of course, it didn't break higher to this bar, so it never backed up. But just assuming you entered on this red bar, assuming that was a good bar, and you entered and put your stop there, notice it came back down and broke lower and stopped you out, only to go exactly where you thought it was going to go. Now, that's just what happens on volatile. I mean, it can happen anytime, but it seems to happen more on crazy days like this. So just be aware of that. But let's back out here, let me talk about the big picture again. Um, we had a big channel working up during the overnight. We actually had a close outside right in here and a new high, and then we went sideways for quite a bit here. And so even though we got this more slanted blue channel, um, it still played out as well. We continue to go higher, and that's just what will happen a lot of times on a really strong buy day when the market's just got an upward bias. It it may look like it's going to sell off several times and go sideways for a while, only to go higher, and then go sideways for a while, just like this, only to go higher. And then finally we sold off a little bit here late in the afternoon, but now it's bouncing again. And that'll happen a lot on really strong days, trend days like this. So you need to find these shorter term trend lines in here and play them. And you need to be careful about going shorts. I do have a few shorts in here, but when we go to them and talk about them, you'll see that they're, uh, I'll explain to you why I like them in those particular instances. But notice there's only 2 or 3 of them all day long. And the reason we have one up here is because we were in this consistent range and it kept turning up or down. And we were playing the range at that point. These others are reversal type areas. Well, it looks like the market's about to reverse. So, but anyway, let me back out a little more. Actually, what I was trying to get at was you almost didn't even need this channel right here. You got the first one and then this flatter one, the bigger one, the one that I'm highlighting right there. You almost didn't need it, but you have to put it in there really anyway. It really never came into play. Well, I guess I take that back because we did get the break here, a new high, and it like we were going to sell off. But even then, this trend line didn't last very long. You got a break, a new low, and then it reversed. So this trend line didn't really help you a whole lot here. Might have confused you more than it helped you. So let me back out, and you can see how sideways that is really from about 4 or 5 o'clock this morning. We're just really going sideways until right here we finally shoot up a little more. And then we go sideways again for quite a bit before we shoot up again into the 2 o'clock hour. So let me back out a little more here and we'll go through the trades and go from there. But 7 o'clock came right in here and prices are just working down. And at this point we had the break of this main channel here and a new high, and we had a double top right there. So that's a little concerning, especially when we make a lower low right here versus this one, in the fact that you can see this trend line did come into play a little bit here, but you end up getting a reversal out of it. Notice that we shot through the EMA, pushed up once, failed, pushed up again, and that's a failed second entry. Technically, it's not a failed second entry long because we did break higher up here, but that's pretty much all one move, and you can see the trend line. But at this point, you would expect prices to at least make a new low here. So I like that second entry short, and I really treated that like a failed second entry long. At least it's a 2 attempts to try to go higher off the EMA. It's a double test. Nice bearish bar. That turns out to be a really good trade. You had to kind of wait on that one. It was almost almost 8:30 before we got a trade this morning that I liked anyway. You definitely didn't want to be going short up in here. And so you might have considered going long right here. It is a second entry long. I didn't like it just simply because it's mostly an inside bar. There is a little bit of room back to the EMA, but when we went straight on through right there, that's a little bit of concern. That one's a possibility though, if you want to be a little more aggressive. And of course, now we get to close outside this trend line, a new low, and you get a higher low right here that you might have taken, but there's a lot, you just don't have much room there. It's just a higher low. It's a little uncertain what's going to happen right there. And then you get a failed second entry short. But look again, now you got 1, 2, 3, you got 4 bars stacked up there. Somebody asked me about this trade. This is one where he went long here, and of course he gets stopped out right here only to see it go higher like he thought it would go. But really at this point, you're not looking for a reversal. You may be looking for the retest of a new high, but you want to see, I can see why you would like that trade, but his chart didn't quite look like mine. He didn't have these bars stacking up. He maybe only had 1 or 2 bars here, and so it looked a little more like a reversal pattern. But that congestion's certainly a worry for me. The fact that this is not a very good signal bar is another one, although we don't worry about the signal bar on a failed second entry too much because it's going to trap people. But what you have to really look at is like, how many people is this going to fool to the short side if it goes higher here? Not many. In fact, what it ends up doing is it fools people to the long side, stops them out, and then it goes higher. So it's really a long trap, only to trap people on the wrong side and trap them out, and then it goes right where you think it's going to go. So that's really what's happening there. And at this point, this is like a double test here. This is not a very good signal bar, but you can see that support holding across there. Uh, that's a decent signal bar. It's not a great one. I marked it. It is a second entry long. Look at that high. First entry, pullback, second entry. And you probably got people all confused and scared after this little trap right here. And of course, it runs up and starts going sideways again. But here you get a double test. Notice you made the low. You test it once. You test it twice with a little failed break higher. But the main reason I like this one is it confirms that trend line and bounces right off of it. It's a little failed break lower in an up market. So I like that one. If you got a better signal bar here with more room to get out, maybe you would enter here. But this is, if you enter here, you end up getting this right here. And I'd be looking for runners on these too. And then you just get, this is just basically a repeat pattern of this. And then now you get another repeat pattern of it. You're going sideways. You get the double test of this level right here with a failed break lower and a nice signal bar. And off it goes again. And if it weren't for the fact that this one didn't actually touch the trend line, so it's a little bit concerning, but the fact that it's a triple repeat pattern in a row, it's hard to ignore that one. So then of course we finally turned down and this thing's just taking off. We get our first break and a new low, so you may attempt going long right there. Being that far away from the EMA. And this is actually, notice you're moving down first entry, second entry. That's second entry long as well, although that doesn't really like two legs down. It's still second entry long. And this actually is support from back over here as well. So there's a few reasons to like that one. You might go long there. But notice that's a new low, and then you get a first entry, and you get a second entry short right off the EMA, and what looks like we might finally be going to reverse. Guaranteed they trap some people to the long side there. And then a lot of these longs, people that got long here are going to exit. And notice what happens. It comes all the way down here about where this all started, and all these longs were starting to pile up, and it shakes them all out by that time and then reverses. And that's what this market loves. The ES is so efficient, and they know how people think, and they know where people put their stops. And you can't hardly outsmart this thing. So anyway, this is another one that's tempting, being that far away after a break of this trend line and this big move down. And if you draw the trend line right there, we do have a, okay, sorry, I had a little interruption there, but I forgot we were right in here somewhere talking about this. Oh, you might take that trade right there. Then, of course, you move up, you come back, draw your trend line right there, and then you actually come back to it again on a, notice this is two legs up, so that's a failed second entry short. And it does bounce right off a trend line, nice bullish bar. It's a great place to go long. And at this point, I would treat this, when it turns back up there, I would treat these two legs as one move. And I'd look for possible measured move up, and you can see we went even further than that. And I think we already counted that it was like 10-point move right there. And then we come all the way back here, and of course you want to draw this trend line too. It turns out there's a bigger pattern here, and this is just a shorter term one in here. And you can't go long right here, just simply because this trend line's still working down, and you don't have anything to prove that trend line out at this point. However, it does push up goes down once, tries to go down again. It gives you a little bit of a failure. Again, you got to be careful on these failures. Um, this is the trade I'd probably wait on, but then you don't have a very good signal bar, so but you may take that one. Notice how it's congested. This looks a lot like that one I pointed out earlier where the guy got trapped, and you could get trapped. And at first, it looks like that's what's going to happen, and then it takes off and goes on higher. So you wouldn't have got stopped out on that one. Situation's a little bit different here, although you do have that shorter term trend line, and that's the first break of it. So you would expect prices to try to make a new high, just like you would have on that other one. So you don't know that this won't be a repeat and trap people again. It looks like it was going to, and then it fails. If you remembered the previous pattern and how it played out, when it broke lower here and failed and went higher, you might go long right there. But a lot of times when you get to thinking too much like that, thinking, you'll talk yourself into a bad trade. So I'll just mark it green. And you can't really enter up here. This one would have been a possibility. We just made a new high for the day at that point. I believe that was a new high. But it came back to the midline and bounces, and you would expect it to go back to the highs up here. And so if you had a good signal bar, that would be a good place to enter. But otherwise, you're just getting too far away from the EMA and too close to the upper trend channel line to enter anymore. You want to wait for a correction now. And of course, we just start kind of moving sideways here. This one's a possibility. You've got this double bottom here, but we are making a little bit lower low each time. So it's not, if this had bounced here one more time, I'd say, yeah, that would be blue, but I'd make this one green. It's just a first entry. Of course, we run back up and then we fail here again. It's on the other side of the midline, so we're probably going to come back down to here. So you may take a short right here. And the only reason is because you've got consistent, you made that high, you test it once, you test it twice, and actually you tested it a whole bunch more if you look at all the individual bars. And the entry would actually be one tick below this bar, but your stop has to go above the high, so it goes right there. And then we come back down, we bounce, and we bounce off that support line again, and you get a fairly decent bar. And again, your entry would be one tick above that bar, but your stop goes below this bar. There's not often that you'd want to do that with these inside bars, but on these range days, you can. On these ranges like this, normally inside bars are not real trustworthy, but because this is a trading range and prices are bouncing here consistently over and over and turning down here consistently over and over, you're okay with doing it that way. Then we run back up, and of course we turn down off there again. The only problem with this one is you don't have much room to get out. You really can't see my line real good. I made it a different color just because this chart's so busy, and I don't know if green was a good color, but you can see that. Of course, we had another bounce to the upside here too, and that's a higher low. If you had enough room, that's a possibility. There wasn't enough room on my chart. And same thing coming down here, there wasn't enough room. But now what you could do on either one of these, I'll mark them green and discuss this just so you know how you could possibly trade these. You could let prices break lower and drop a limit order far enough back to where you got room to scalp out and see if he'd come back. And this one came back a few ticks. You might could have got in it. In the end, this one wouldn't have mattered, but you don't know that. So you can't play it hoping that it breaks through because you'll get stopped out more times than not. Same thing here. You could have let this break higher. I think you only needed an extra tick and maybe drop this in a tick into this bar, maybe 2 ticks, see if it would back up and stop you in, and then maybe you get out of it. I didn't mark this one. There's too many sideways bars. You are a little bit away from the EMA when you're playing this so tight. You're not getting very far away. This is another possibility. Same kind of deal. The only problem is that we're starting to make some lower lows here, so that's a little concerning. You definitely don't want to enter here because you're not back up to the line yet. But notice how your trend line turned it back down there. And then same thing. But I wouldn't enter these. I'd wait on a higher low now because we're making these lower highs and lower lows. And you probably can draw a trend line, although I didn't draw one off here. And so that would be, yeah, you can see that little channel working lower there. What was going sideways kind of worked into a little downward channel almost there. But finally we made a higher low here, and we closed back in. And this same thing here, I'd let this break higher and I'd drop a limit order in, and you probably wouldn't want to try for a runner here because it's been turning down, but you would have got one here. The only thing else I would say about this one is you've got a big enough move there. If you get a second leg, your measured move is going to be way on up here. But this thing just keeps going. It turns out the trend just reasserts itself there. They've lulled everybody to sleep. That's what they do in these things. They'll lull you back to sleep, and then suddenly the trend starts back up again. So, but yeah, that's what I saw today. Interesting day. Even though it looks like a huge day, if you just look at the regular trading hours here, I mean, it's still a nice move up, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing like this 100-point move from the overnight that it looks to be. But anyway, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for today, and we'll be back to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week, and actually wrap up our first week of the year. It's hard to believe a week's already gone by almost. So anyway, I hope you had a good trading day. Be careful in this volatility. I mean, these things are like powder kegs. Somebody fires a missile, drops a bomb, or says something, or threatens to do something. Who can send this market in a tailspin in a second, and it can bounce back in another second. So we could continue to see some volatility, so be real careful. Always trade with your safety stops, and make sure they're in place. That way, if something does happen, you're sure to get out of the market. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again tomorrow to wrap up our week. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.